My name is Olivia Parker, and if someone had asked me 10 years ago who I trusted most in the world, I wouldn't have hesitated for a second. The answer would have been Emma Reynolds. Not my parents. Not my brother. Not even myself. Emma. We met when we were 8 years old. I was the shy new girl who had just transferred to a different elementary school. The kind of kid who sat alone during lunch and hoped nobody would notice. On my first day, I carried my lunch tray to an empty table near the window. I remember feeling nervous. Everyone already seemed to have friends. Everyone already belonged somewhere. Everyone except me. Then a blonde girl with a bright smile walked over carrying a peanut butter sandwich and a carton of chocolate milk. Without asking permission, she sat directly across from me. "You're Olivia, right?" I nodded. She smiled. "I'm Emma." That was it. The beginning of a friendship that would shape nearly every part of my life. From that day forward, we were inseparable. We walked home together. Studied together. Spent weekends at each other's houses. When one of us got in trouble, the other usually wasn't far behind. Our parents joked that we shared a brain. Teachers constantly mixed up our names. Neighbors referred to us as a package deal. Eventually, people started calling us something else. Sisters by choice. At first, it sounded silly. But over time, it became true. Emma wasn't just my best friend. She was family. The kind of family you choose. The kind that stays when life gets difficult. Or at least that's what I believed. As we got older, our bond only became stronger. During high school, we shared everything. Secrets. Dreams. Fears. Heartbreaks. Nothing was off limits. When my first boyfriend broke my heart, Emma sat on my bedroom floor until 2 in the morning listening to me cry. When her parents announced their divorce, she spent an entire week sleeping in my guest room. We survived every difficult moment together. And because of that, my trust in her became absolute. The dangerous thing about absolute trust is that you stop questioning people. You stop looking for warning signs. You stop imagining they could ever hurt you. Emma knew everything about me. My insecurities. My ambitions. My weaknesses. My goals. And I knew everything about her too. At least I thought I did. By the time we graduated college, our future seemed perfectly clear. We weren't just best friends anymore. We were partners. Dreamers. 2 young women determined to build something meaningful together. While many of our classmates rushed toward traditional careers, Emma and I spent countless nights discussing business ideas. We wanted freedom. We wanted purpose. We wanted to create something that belonged to us. Something bigger than ourselves. One evening, sitting on the roof of my apartment building, we watched the city lights sparkle beneath the night sky. Emma looked at me and smiled. "Can you imagine where we'll be in 10 years?" I laughed. "Hopefully rich." She laughed too. Then she held out her pinky finger. Just like we had done when we were children. "No matter what happens," she said, "we do this together." I wrapped my finger around hers. Together. Looking back now, that memory hurts more than almost any other. Because in that moment, I believed her completely. I believed she would always stand beside me. I believed she would always protect me the way I would protect her. I believed loyalty mattered to her as much as it mattered to me. And for a long time, there was no reason to think otherwise. For years, Emma was the person I trusted most. The person I defended. The person I would have done anything for. If someone had told me back then that Emma would eventually become the source of the deepest betrayal of my life, I would have laughed in their face. I would have called them crazy. Because some people enter your life and earn a place so permanent that you can't imagine them ever leaving. Emma was one of those people. Or so I thought. What I didn't know was that while I was busy trusting her with my future, she was quietly becoming the one person capable of destroying it. And the opportunity to do exactly that was about to arrive sooner than either of us expected. The opportunity arrived 6 months after graduation. At the time, neither Emma nor I had much money. Most of our friends were applying for corporate jobs. Some were already climbing the first steps of their careers. Meanwhile, Emma and I were sitting inside a tiny coffee shop, discussing ideas on a laptop that barely worked. To most people, we probably looked lost. But we didn't feel lost. We felt excited. Because for the first time, we had the freedom to build something of our own. The idea started small. Very small. I had always loved design, branding, and digital content creation. During college, I had helped several local businesses improve their social media presence. Nothing major. Just small projects. But I noticed something interesting. Many business owners desperately needed help marketing themselves online. They didn't know how to create content. They didn't understand social media. And they certainly didn't have time to learn. That's when the idea hit me. What if we built a digital marketing agency? Emma loved the concept immediately. For weeks, we planned everything together. Business models, services, pricing, branding, growth strategies. Every night felt like another step towards something bigger. Soon, we launched our company. At first, it was just the two of us working from my apartment. The office was actually my dining table. The conference room was my couch. And the break room was whatever happened to be inside the refrigerator. But we didn't care. We were building our dream. The first few months were difficult. Very difficult. Clients were hard to find. Money was tight. Most days involved dozens of cold emails and phone calls. We heard no far more often than yes. Still, we refused to quit. Every rejection simply pushed us harder. Some nights we worked until 2 or 3 in the morning. Other nights we barely slept at all. While our friends enjoyed weekends and vacations, Emma and I were answering emails, creating marketing campaigns, and chasing new opportunities. The sacrifices felt worth it. Because slowly, things started changing. 1 client became 3. 3 became 7. 7 became 15. Then 20. For the first time, the business began generating real income. Nothing life-changing. But enough to prove we were moving in the right direction. I still remember the day we signed our first major client. Emma and I screamed so loudly that our downstairs neighbor banged on the ceiling with a broom. We laughed for nearly 10 minutes. Then ordered cheap pizza and celebrated like we had won the lottery. Looking back, those were some of the happiest days of my life. Not because of the money. Because of the trust. I genuinely believed Emma and I would spend decades building something incredible together. As the company grew, our responsibilities naturally divided. I focused on creative work, client strategy, content development, brand growth. Emma handled operations, accounting, contracts, financial management. It made sense. She was organized, detail-oriented, excellent with numbers. And most importantly, I trusted her completely. In fact, I trusted her more than anyone else in the world. More than my parents. More than my relatives. More than myself sometimes. When financial decisions needed approval, I rarely questioned them. When paperwork needed signatures, I signed. When Emma recommended changes, I agreed. After all, she wasn't just my business partner. She was Emma. My best friend. My sister by choice. The person who had stood beside me for nearly 20 years. Why would I doubt her? As the company expanded, we opened joint business accounts. Shared access to financial systems. Shared control over company resources. Shared everything. At least that's what I thought. Over the next 2 years, our business continued growing faster than we expected. Revenue increased. New clients arrived monthly. We hired our first employees. Then our second. Then our fifth. Soon, people started talking about us as a local success story. Young entrepreneurs. Female founders. Best friends building a business together. The future looked bright. Almost perfect. But perfection can be dangerous. Because when everything seems perfect, you stop looking for problems. And while I was busy focusing on growth, something else was quietly growing. Something I didn't see. Something hidden beneath years of friendship and trust. At first, the warning signs were small. Easy to ignore. Emma became strangely protective of certain financial reports. She occasionally avoided questions about expenses. Sometimes she seemed uncomfortable discussing specific accounts. Whenever I asked, she always had an explanation. And because I trusted her, I accepted those explanations without hesitation. That was my mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. Because while I believed we were building one future together, Emma had already started planning a very different future. One that didn't include me. And I wouldn't discover the truth until it was far too late. 3 years after Emma and I started the company, we received the biggest opportunity of our careers. A venture capital firm from New York wanted to meet with us. Not over Zoom. Not through email. In person. They were interested in investing nearly $2 million into our business. When the email arrived, I thought it was a joke. I read it 5 times before forwarding it to Emma. Her response came almost immediately. This is it. 4 weeks, we prepared. Presentations. Financial projections. Growth strategies. Everything had to be perfect. The meeting was scheduled in New York, and because I handled most of the client-facing and creative side of the business, I would be leading the presentation. Emma insisted she stay behind and manage operations. At the time, it seemed completely reasonable. I never questioned it. Why would I? She was my best friend. My business partner. The person I trusted most. The morning of my flight, Emma hugged me outside the office. "You've got this," she said. I smiled. "We've got this." Those would be some of the last honest words we ever exchanged. The investor meeting went better than I could have imagined. For 2 days, I met with executives, advisors, and potential investors. They loved our growth numbers. Loved our vision. Loved our future plans. When I walked out of the final meeting, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Excitement. Hope. I couldn't wait to get home and tell Emma. I even bought a bottle of champagne at the airport. I imagined us celebrating. Laughing. Talking about everything we had accomplished together. Instead, I came home to a nightmare. The first sign appeared when I tried using my company credit card to pay for a rideshare. Transaction declined. I frowned. That had never happened before. Maybe the bank system was down. Maybe there was a temporary issue. I didn't think much about it. Until I reached the office. The parking lot looked strangely empty. Several employee vehicles were gone. The reception area was dark. Half the desks were empty. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. Something wasn't right. I pulled out my phone and called Emma. No answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. Then again. Nothing. Now I was worried. I opened my laptop and logged into the company banking portal. An error message appeared. Access denied. My heart skipped a beat. I tried again. Same result. I attempted another account. Locked out. Another. Locked out. My hands began shaking. Immediately, I called the bank. After verifying my identity, the representative sounded confused. Ms. Parker, according to our records, your account permissions were removed 3 days ago. I froze. What? I'm showing authorization changes submitted by an account administrator. My stomach dropped. There was only one other administrator. Emma. The champagne bottle slipped from my hand and shattered across the office floor. The representative continued speaking. But I barely heard her. Because deep down, I already knew. I just wasn't ready to accept it. For the next hour, I desperately searched for answers. Then one of our former employees finally called me back. What she told me shattered everything. Emma had spent months preparing her exit. Months. Not days. Not weeks. Months. She had secretly created a new company. A competing company. She had approached key employees behind my back. Offered them jobs. Promised higher salaries. And many had accepted. Then came the worst part. Several major clients had left with her. Clients I had personally spent years building relationships with. Clients who represented nearly half our revenue. I felt physically sick. But the nightmare wasn't over. Not even close. That evening, after dozens of phone calls, emails, and conversations, the full truth finally emerged. Emma had transferred huge amounts of money out of company accounts. Legally questionable amounts. Amounts that should have been impossible to move without raising alarms. Yet somehow she had done it. The company funds were nearly gone. The emergency reserves. Gone. The operating cash. Gone. The growth fund. Gone. Years of work. Years of sacrifice. Years of trust. Gone. I sat alone in my office long after sunset. The building was silent. Dark. Empty. And for the first time in my life, I truly understood what betrayal felt like. Not disappointment. Not heartbreak. Betrayal. Because betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from people you love. People you trust. People you would never suspect. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A message from Emma. Just one sentence. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I stared at the screen. Waiting. Hoping there would be more. An explanation. A reason. Anything. Nothing came. The next morning, social media delivered the final blow. There she was. Emma Reynolds. Standing in front of a brand new office. Smiling beside a giant company logo. Announcing the launch of her new business. The business she had secretly built using the clients, employees, and resources we had created together. Thousands of people congratulated her. Praised her. Celebrated her success. And none of them knew the truth. None of them knew what she had done. I stared at the photo for several minutes. Then closed my phone. Because suddenly, the money wasn't what hurt most. The clients weren't what hurt most. Even the business wasn't what hurt most. What hurt most was realizing that the person I trusted like a sister had been lying to me for months. Maybe years. And for the first time since I met Emma at 8 years old. I no longer recognized the person staring back at me from that photograph. The worst part wasn't losing the company. The worst part was realizing that my best friend had stolen far more than money. She had stolen my trust. And I had no idea how to get it back. The weeks after Emma's betrayal felt like living inside a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every morning, I opened my eyes hoping it had all been a misunderstanding. A mistake. A misunderstanding that could be fixed with a phone call. A conversation. An apology. But reality was always waiting. Cold. Unforgiving. And painfully real. The company Emma and I had spent years building was collapsing. Fast. Clients continued leaving. Employees resigned. Projects were cancelled. Revenue disappeared almost overnight. Every day seemed to bring another disaster. Another bill. Another problem. Another reminder of everything I had lost. At first, I fought back. I worked 18-hour days trying to save what remained. I contacted old clients. Scheduled meetings. Negotiated contracts. Searched for new opportunities. Anything to stop the bleeding. But the damage was already done. Emma hadn't just stolen money. She had stolen momentum. Relationships. Trust. Years of hard-earned credibility. Things that couldn't be replaced overnight. 3 months later, I faced a reality I never imagined. I had to let most of my remaining employees go. One by one, I sat across from people who had trusted me and explained that I couldn't keep them on payroll. Some cried. Some understood. Some looked disappointed. Every conversation felt like another piece of my dream falling apart. When the last employee left, I sat alone in the office. The silence was unbearable. The building that once felt alive now felt empty. Like a ghost of the future I had imagined. Soon after that, I made another painful decision. I gave up the office. The day I handed over the keys, I cried in my car for nearly an hour. Not because it was just an office. Because it represented everything Emma and I had built together. And now it was gone. The financial situation became worse. Much worse. The business still carried obligations. Outstanding expenses. Loans. Contracts. Debts. Without the revenue we once had, every month became a battle. My savings disappeared quickly. Then completely. Credit cards filled up. Bills piled higher. For the first time in my life, I found myself avoiding phone calls because I was afraid they were creditors. The stress became overwhelming. I stopped sleeping properly. Stopped exercising. Stopped seeing friends. Stopped answering messages. Days blended together. Sometimes I wouldn't leave my apartment for an entire weekend. The woman who once dreamed about building something extraordinary could barely find the energy to get out of bed. The hardest part wasn't losing the business. It was losing myself. I no longer recognized the person staring back at me in the mirror. I looked exhausted. Defeated. Broken. One evening, I sat on my apartment floor surrounded by unopened mail. Past due notices. Payment reminders. Financial statements. I stared at them without moving. Hours passed. I barely noticed. My mind felt numb. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about growth. Or goals. Or dreams. I was simply trying to survive. Meanwhile, Emma appeared to be thriving. Every time I opened social media, there she was. Smiling. Traveling. Celebrating. Winning. At least that's what it looked like. Luxury hotels. Private events. Expensive restaurants. Designer clothes. Business conferences. Success awards. Thousands of followers praised her. Business magazines featured her. Podcasts interviewed her. Articles called her an inspiring entrepreneur. People admired her, respected her, celebrated her. And every time I saw those headlines, a knot formed in my stomach. Because I knew the truth. I knew what it had cost. I knew who she had stepped on to get there. Yet nobody else seemed to care. Sometimes I wanted to tell the world. To expose everything. To show everyone who Emma really was. But another part of me was simply too exhausted. Too tired to fight. Too tired to explain. Too tired to carry the weight of what had happened. Months passed. The gap between our lives seemed impossible to ignore. Emma appeared to be living her best life. I was barely holding mine together. Friends who once knew us both often assumed she was the victim. Or that we had simply grown apart. Very few people knew the full story. Even fewer understood it. One afternoon, I ran into an old college acquaintance at a grocery store. After a brief conversation, she smiled. I saw Emma's company featured online. I forced a polite smile. Yeah. She's doing amazing. I nodded. Then changed the subject. Because correcting people had become exhausting. Nobody wanted to hear the complicated truth. People preferred simple success stories. And Emma's story looked perfect from the outside. That night, I returned home and sat in the dark. The apartment was quiet. The city lights flickered through the window. For a long time, I stared at the skyline. Thinking. Wondering. Questioning. Maybe this was how the story ended. Maybe Emma had won. Maybe good people didn't always get justice. Maybe betrayal really did pay. The thought haunted me. But what I didn't know was that appearances can be dangerously misleading. Because while Emma was busy showing the world her perfect life, a series of decisions she had made behind closed doors were beginning to catch up with her. Small mistakes. Hidden secrets. Dangerous shortcuts. The kind that don't stay hidden forever. And somewhere beneath the luxury photos, the interviews, and the applause, the first cracks were already starting to appear. Emma just couldn't see them yet. But karma could. And it was moving far faster than either of us expected. For almost a year, it seemed like Emma had gotten away with everything. The stolen clients. The stolen money. The lies. The betrayal. From the outside, her life looked perfect. Meanwhile, I was still trying to rebuild mine. I had stopped checking her social media regularly. It hurt too much. Every photo felt like a reminder of what I had lost. So I focused on survival. One day at a time. One small step at a time. Then, unexpectedly, things began to change. It started with a phone call. One of my former clients reached out. A client who had left my company to work with Emma. His voice sounded frustrated. "Olivia, have you heard what's happening over there?" I frowned. "No." "Why?" There was a pause. Then he sighed. "Something isn't right." At first, I didn't think much about it. Businesses face challenges all the time. But over the following weeks, similar conversations kept happening. Former employees. Former clients. Industry contacts. Everyone seemed to be hearing the same rumors. Missed payments. Accounting discrepancies. Contract disputes. Financial confusion. The stories kept growing. Then came the first public crack. A major corporate client filed a lawsuit against Emma's company. The client claimed they had been misled about campaign spending and financial reporting. The lawsuit immediately attracted attention. Industry blogs picked up the story. Business websites started asking questions. Social media began speculating. For the first time, Emma wasn't receiving praise. She was receiving scrutiny. At first, she denied everything. Publicly. Confidently. She posted statements claiming the accusations were false. Many people believed her. After all, she had spent years carefully building her image. The successful entrepreneur. The self-made founder. The inspirational businesswoman. But investigations have a way of uncovering things. And once people started looking closer, they found more than they expected. A lot more. Within weeks, additional allegations surfaced. Former contractors came forward. Former employees spoke anonymously. Questions emerged about company finances. Questions about business practices. Questions about transactions that didn't seem to make sense. The pressure continued building. Then came the bombshell. According to public reports, tax authorities had opened an investigation into irregularities connected to her business records. The news spread quickly. Very quickly. The same media outlets that once celebrated her success were now covering the investigation. The headlines changed overnight. And so did public opinion. Social media can build a reputation. But it can destroy one just as quickly. The comments became brutal. People who once praised Emma suddenly distanced themselves. Followers questioned her credibility. Supporters disappeared. Critics multiplied. Every day seemed to bring another negative article. Another controversy. Another damaging revelation. I watched it all unfold with mixed emotions. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt sad. Because despite everything she had done, this was still Emma. The girl who sat across from me in elementary school. The girl who promised we'd always be sisters. The girl I once trusted more than anyone. But karma doesn't care about history. It doesn't care about promises. It doesn't care about excuses. It only cares about consequences. The situation became worse when investors began pulling away. Several major financial backers quietly ended their relationships with her company. Partnerships disappeared. Future funding vanished. Expansion plans were cancelled. The confidence that once surrounded Emma's business evaporated. Fast. Very fast. Within months, her company went from being a rising success story to a struggling organization fighting for survival. Employees began leaving. Clients started terminating contracts. Revenue dropped. The empire she had built using deception was beginning to crumble. One evening, while scrolling through industry news, I came across an article about Emma's company. The article wasn't celebrating growth. It wasn't praising innovation. It wasn't announcing awards. Instead, it detailed lawsuits, investigations, and financial difficulties. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not smiling. Not celebrating. Just thinking. For years, I had wondered if justice would ever come. For years, I had questioned whether doing the right thing even mattered. Now I finally had my answer. Because the truth has a strange way of resurfacing. Sometimes it takes months. Sometimes years. But eventually, it finds its way into the light. And Emma was learning that lesson the hard way. The woman who once appeared untouchable was suddenly losing everything. Her reputation. Her business. Her influence. Her image. Everything she had sacrificed our friendship to obtain. And the most surprising part. The downfall was only beginning. Because soon, the woman who had once stolen my future would find herself completely alone. And when that happened, there would be only one person left she could turn to. Me. The collapse happened much faster than anyone expected. 1 month, Emma was still fighting to save her company. The next, it was falling apart in public. Clients terminated contracts. Investors disappeared. Employees resigned. Partnerships ended. The business she had spent years building was unraveling piece by piece. And unlike before, there was nobody left to hide behind. No success story. No polished interviews. No carefully crafted social media posts. Just consequences. I learned most of it through industry contacts. People talk when businesses fail. Especially when the downfall is dramatic. According to several former employees, morale inside Emma's company had completely collapsed. People no longer trusted leadership. Many feared losing their jobs. Others simply wanted out before things became worse. One by one, they left. The same employees who once praised Emma now avoided her calls. The same partners who once celebrated her success quietly disappeared. The same friends who filled her social media comments with support suddenly became impossible to find. Success attracts people. Failure reveals them. And Emma was learning that lesson in real time. Months passed. The lawsuits continued. The investigations continued. The financial pressure continued. Then one morning, I received news that shocked even me. Emma's company had officially shut down. It was over. The offices were closed. Operations were suspended. Employees were gone. The company no longer existed. I stared at the message for several moments. Not because I felt victorious. Because it was hard to believe. For years, Emma had seemed unstoppable. Now everything was gone. The money. The reputation. The influence. The business. Gone. Yet strangely, I felt no satisfaction. No celebration. No revenge. Just sadness. Because once upon a time, Emma wasn't my enemy. She was my best friend. And watching someone destroy their own life is never as satisfying as people imagine. A few weeks later, I was working late in my office when the receptionist called. Olivia? Yeah. There's someone here to see you. I frowned. Did they have an appointment? No. Who is it? There was a brief pause. Then she answered. It's Emma. My stomach tightened. For a moment, I thought I had heard her wrong. Emma? Here. After everything? I slowly stood up. My mind raced. The last time we had spoken was through lawyers and legal documents. Years had passed. And now she was sitting in my reception area. Waiting. I walked toward the lobby. The moment I saw her, I barely recognized her. The confident woman from magazine covers was gone. The polished entrepreneur was gone. Even the arrogance seemed gone. She looked exhausted. Older. Tired. Not physically. Emotionally. As if life had finally caught up with her. When our eyes met, neither of us spoke. Not immediately. Because what do you say after destroying a 20-year friendship? What words could possibly bridge that distance? Finally, I gestured toward a conference room. We sat across from each other. Just like we had sat across from each other hundreds of times before. Except this time, everything was different. The silence felt heavy. Emma looked down at the table. Then she spoke. I don't know where to start. Neither did I. Several seconds passed. Then, unexpectedly, tears filled her eyes. I lost everything. Her voice cracked. For years, I had imagined this moment. I imagined feeling triumphant. Powerful. Vindicated. Instead, I simply listened. Because the person sitting across from me wasn't the successful entrepreneur who betrayed me. She was a broken human being. And broken people don't need lectures. They need honesty. Emma wiped her eyes. Then finally said something I had waited years to hear. You were right. The room became quiet. She looked directly at me. For the first time in years. No excuses. No manipulation. No blame. Just truth. I betrayed you. Hearing those words felt surreal. Not because I needed them anymore. Because I never thought they would come. Emma lowered her head. I told myself I deserved more. Her voice trembled. I convinced myself I was smarter. More important. More valuable. Every sentence seemed painful. As the company grew, greed took over. Tears rolled down her face. And by the time I realized what I had become. She paused. It was too late. I remained silent. Allowing her to continue. Because this wasn't about me speaking. It was about her finally facing the truth. She looked around the room. Then laughed bitterly. You know what's funny? I said nothing. The money didn't make me happy. Another tear slipped down her cheek. The success didn't make me happy. She shook her head. I traded the most important relationship in my life for things I don't even have anymore. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence carried years of memories. Years of friendship. Years of betrayal. Years of pain. Finally, Emma looked at me. Her eyes were red. Defeated. Ashamed. And completely sincere. Olivia. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I'm sorry. Not the fake apology from a text message. Not the apology meant to avoid consequences. A real apology. The kind that comes from someone who finally understands the damage they caused. Then came the question I never expected. I need help. The words hung in the air. Emma explained that she was struggling financially. Her reputation was destroyed. Most of her friends had disappeared. Former partners wouldn't return her calls. She felt completely alone. And somehow, after everything, she had come to me. The person she hurt most. The person she betrayed. The person she abandoned. For several moments I simply sat there. Thinking. Looking at the woman who had once been my closest friend. And realizing something surprising. I no longer hated her. The anger had disappeared long ago. What remained was wisdom. Perspective. And a lesson neither of us would ever forget. Because sometimes karma doesn't arrive as revenge. Sometimes karma arrives as understanding. And Emma was finally understanding exactly what her choices had cost her. What happened next would determine whether our story ended with bitterness. Or something far more powerful. For several moments after Emma asked for help, neither of us spoke. The conference room felt strangely quiet. Outside the glass walls, employees moved through the office, answering calls and attending meetings. Life continued. But inside that room, it felt as though time had stopped. Emma sat across from me, waiting. Not for money. Not for a business opportunity. For forgiveness. And that was something far more valuable. I looked at the woman who had once been my closest friend. The girl who shared my lunch table when I was 8 years old. The teenager who promised we'd always be sisters. The business partner who helped build my dream. And the person who ultimately destroyed it. For years, I imagined what I would do if this moment ever came. I imagined confronting her. Making her feel the same pain I felt. Reminding her of every lie. Every betrayal. Every sleepless night. Every tear. But something had changed over the years. Success had changed me. Not by making me stronger. By making me wiser. I finally understood something important. Holding on to anger doesn't punish the person who hurt you. It punishes you. And I was tired of carrying that weight. Emma wiped another tear from her face. I don't expect you to forgive me. Her voice shook. I probably don't deserve it. I thought about that for a moment. Then I leaned forward. You're right. She looked down. Pain flashed across her face. But before she could speak, I continued. You didn't deserve my trust. The room became silent. Emma nodded slowly. As if she already knew. Because she did. I trusted you with everything. My voice remained calm. Not angry. Not bitter. Just honest. My friendship. My future. My company. My dreams. Emma couldn't look at me. And you broke that trust. Another tear rolled down her cheek. I know. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I surprised both of us. Including myself. But I forgive you. Emma's head snapped upward. Her eyes widened. As if she wasn't sure she had heard me correctly. What? I smiled softly. I forgive you. The words felt lighter than I expected. Because forgiveness wasn't something I was giving her. It was something I was giving myself. Freedom. Closure. Peace. Emma began crying openly. Years of guilt seemed to pour out all at once. I'm so sorry, Olivia. This time, I believed her. Not because of the tears. Because she finally understood. Some lessons can only be learned through consequences. And Emma had paid a very expensive price. After a few moments, she looked at me hopefully. Almost cautiously. Do you think? She hesitated. Then finally asked. Do you think we could work together again someday? The question hung in the air. I already knew my answer. Not because I hated her. Not because I wanted revenge. Because some things cannot be rebuilt exactly as they were. Trust is one of them. I shook my head gently. Emma closed her eyes. As if she expected that answer. You can be forgiven, I said. But forgiveness and trust aren't the same thing. She nodded slowly. Understanding. Finally understanding. I wish I could change what happened. I believe that too. But life doesn't move backward. Only forward. The next hour passed peacefully. For the first time in years, we talked honestly. No business. No lawsuits. No blame. Just two people reflecting on choices and consequences. Eventually, Emma stood to leave. Before reaching the door, she paused. Then turned back toward me. There isn't a day that goes by when I don't regret what I did. I looked at her. And for the first time in a very long time, I saw the friend I once knew. Not completely. But enough. Then she smiled sadly. You know what the worst part is? I raised an eyebrow. Emma laughed softly. Not a happy laugh. A painful one. I spent years chasing money. She looked around my office. The company. The team. The future. Everything. And then she said something I'll never forget. I thought money was the most valuable thing in my life. A tear slid down her cheek. It wasn't. She paused. It was you. The room became silent. Because deep down, we both knew it was true. Money can be earned again. Businesses can be rebuilt. Careers can recover. But genuine friendship, real loyalty, true trust, those things are rare. And once they're broken, they may never fully return. Emma left shortly afterward. And that was the last time I saw her for several years. As I watched her walk away through the office windows, I felt something unexpected. Not happiness. Not sadness. Peace. Because the story was finally over. The betrayal. The anger. The regret. The pain. All of it. Finished. A few months later, I received a handwritten letter from Emma. Inside was a simple message. No excuses. No requests. No explanations. Just gratitude. Gratitude for the friendship we once shared. And gratitude for the forgiveness she never expected to receive. I still keep that letter today. Not because it erased the past. Nothing can do that. But because it reminds me of an important truth. People make mistakes. Sometimes terrible mistakes. But our greatest mistakes do not have to define the rest of our lives. If we're willing to learn from them. And if we're brave enough to face the consequences. Final moral of the story. Money can buy opportunities, comfort, and success. But it cannot buy trust. It cannot buy loyalty. And it cannot replace the people who genuinely care about you. Never sacrifice meaningful relationships for temporary gain. Because when greed takes control, the price you pay may be far greater than the reward you receive. Sometimes the most valuable thing in life isn't what you gain. It's what you choose not to lose.